This week on Q&A, our guest is Madeleine Sackler, director and producer of a new documentary on charter schools. It's called The Lottery.
Madeleine Sackler, what was your immediate reaction when you read in the New York Times the first sentence of your review when Jeanette Cazzola said, with a little tweaking, The Lottery, your documentary, would fit nicely into the marketing materials for the Harlem Success Academy?
I think it's an unfortunate description. I've talked to all of the families in the film about it at length because this is a film really about them and about their experience. And I think all of them were a little bit hurt by that because this is a true story. These are real kids that are experiencing something very difficult, and the families are experiencing something very, very difficult. And so I think to reduce that to, propaganda or calling it advocacy or something like that is a little bit unfair.
Set it up. What is it?
The film?
Yes.
The film, well, it's called The Lottery, and it's about 4 families from Harlem and 1 from the Bronx who are entering their children into a lottery for a school in Harlem. Unfortunately, thousands and thousands of families are going through this process every year, and so their chances are about 1 in 7. And initially we were very excited to make a film solely about that, just about 4 families, a portrait of them and their experience. But what we found was that there's an enormous political controversy surrounding that process and the particular school that they were trying to get their kids into. And so that became sort of the second storyline in the film.
Let's watch just a little bit of it, and then I'll ask you some more questions.
Straight line, nice and quiet. Hands on top. Thank you, 100%. Elvis, can you share what you have? All eyes should be on Elvis.
I am a person. My mom is a person too.
Kiss your brain. I love how you decided to talk about 2 nouns. I love it. Did you notice he was telling us about some nouns?
There is a myth that parents in certain neighborhoods don't really care about education, and I have never believed that to be true, and all of my experience has indicated that that is not the case.
If you're writing and you're doing a good job, pat yourself on the back. Kiss your brains for all the hard work that you're doing.
The problem in less affluent communities is that parents don't have the choices that middle and upper middle class parents have. They can't buy an apartment in the PS6 zone. They can't move to Westchester. Those are not options. It doesn't mean because they don't have those options that they don't want alternatives. The problem is not the parents. The problem is not the children. The problem is a system that protects academic failure and limits the choices that parents have.
If you're not from New York, talking about Harlem and Westchester and this woman, Eva Moskowitz, fill in the blanks.
Sure. So, what you find is that what the public education system is offering varies dramatically from district to district. And in fact, many studies have been done that show that, unfortunately, demographics and the zip code that you're from in this country determines your destiny. And that is exhibited in many ways, but especially in terms of educational outcome. So if you're from a more affluent suburb like Westchester or I'm from 30 minutes away from Harlem, we have access to a much better public education system than the kids do in Harlem. And that's really what I was interested in. I think that difference is, I think it's morally wrong. I really think that this is the civil rights issue of today, and it's not just about race. It's about class. And the risks of this are tremendous. I can end up going to college and choosing if I want to be a doctor or a struggling filmmaker. And kids in Harlem, many of them aren't going to have that choice because they're not going to have the skills to graduate from high school and to get through college.
Eva Moskowitz, who is she?
Eva Moskowitz founded the school that's featured in the film. We interviewed 3 leaders of charter school networks, Jeffrey Canada, Daisha Toll, and Eva Moskowitz, who collectively I think have over 100 schools at this point, including the KIPP network as well, actually. And Eva Moskowitz runs one of them. It's called Harlem Success Academy. She's also a former city council member where she chaired the education committee. So she's quite politically active. And when she lost her run for borough president, she decided to go ahead and open schools and prove what she thought she knew, which was that all kids could succeed.
And she's a Democrat.
She is. She is one of the early education reformer Democrats. Yeah.
Another clip will show us one of your families that you filmed.
More Alicia. There's gonna be books. Now more books. And that's gonna be. Give the box. 1, 2, 3.
Avi, pamtu, avatu, pamtu, pamnati naitu, atvitu, atu, tnaf, vambra, mavamata, vud, viu, ava, tu ato, natu, ava matu, pen. Oh, I'm a tip with the video. I'm a tip to like me. I'm a lot of I'm a tip foot. I breathe foot. I'm the mommy. Mommy from Baba. We know each other. I'm that ever knew.
She said she don't go to work now. She gotta take care of me.
When did Nadia Horn lose her hearing?
Very young. I think she was about 2.
What are her circumstances? Was that her home?
Yep, that was her home. She's a single mother. She lives actually down the street from me, so I see her and Amina a lot, which is really fun. But I think, they are in a very challenging circumstance. She's a single deaf mother. She clearly adores her daughter and understands, like, just about all of the parents that I met, that education is the key to her daughter's success. And so she did the best that she could to try to find her a better schools than what was being offered up in the traditional zoned system in her district.
What's she do for a living?
She doesn't work right now. She's trying to get her GED.
And that little kid, I've seen the whole documentary, can sign. I mean, we saw a little bit right there.
Yeah, she can. She did she was very helpful.
How old is
on the shoot? At the time that we were shooting, she was 4. And so it's now been a year.
And how much shooting I know you have 4 families, how much shooting did you have to do with each family?
We shot for a total of 3 months. So we shot last year from February until May. And the idea was to get to know sort of the families and their lives and their circumstances and their dreams in the months leading up to the lottery, with the lottery being sort of the climactic event that brings all of these different people together. And it varied, the amount of time that we spent with them. If you've ever been in a New York apartment, they're very small, and we had, a 6'5" cameraman and a lot of equipment. So we tried to do it in short bursts.
Now, you said that she lives right down the street from you. Do you live in Harlem?
I don't. I live on 88th Street, so I live in Upper Manhattan. So.
If you've never been to Harlem, where does it start and where does it finish?
That's a good question. It depends who you ask, because there's different neighborhoods in Upper Manhattan, like Sugar Hill, I think it's called, and that's on 145th Street, and some people consider that part of Harlem, some people don't, so it's sort of hard to say. But it's basically above Central Park.
And the reason I ask is that later on it becomes a controversy as to where Eva Moskowitz lives.
Yeah.
Let's see her some more talking to some of the parents.
I wanted to make sure to tell you personally the good, the bad, and the ugly about our school design. We don't have any kind of magic formula here. It's basically establishing a very strong school culture of high expectations. So we have a longer school day and we have a longer school year, and we're pretty relentless. What happens if your child if you don't show up on time? What do you think we do? What would really crazy people do who are just totally focused on you getting your kid to school? We do wake-up calls. We will wake you up. If you are late consistently, we will do wake-up calls. We're gonna have to work 3 times as hard. And we do, and we're very successful. On our practice exams, 100% of our children ace the exam. 100%. There's no zone school in Harlem that has more than 58% of the children passing the tests. To me, what this suggests is that children are capable of an enormous amount, and the problem with education is not the children, it's the grown-ups. We do not view the tests as the end goal. Our goal for our children is college graduation.
We thought that you could improve the education outcomes for the children in Central Harlem, and we were constantly hearing it's not the same kids, and the families are really troubled, and these young people are dealing with so many issues in their life. We really can't expect them to be able to compete with other children who are growing up in better circumstances. We thought that while indeed it was going to be hard for our children, that we could create schools, and we think these schools can be created all over America where children still learn despite the fact that they're growing up in these troubled neighborhoods and troubled families.
When did you learn that Eva Moskowitz was controversial?
I learned that over the process of the shoot, actually. We really just stumbled on this controversy, and actually going into the project, I was very intentional about wanting to avoid controversy and politics, because I didn't want to divide the audience, and I didn't have any particular side that I took. But we really found that that was impossible, and I think what I sort of learned over the process is that it's not really about sides. There's a lot of people that are looking to sort of divide and to create sides. But in fact, it's really just about, or should be about, what's best for kids. And so I thought it was important to show the controversy in the end, because it answers the question that I had going in, which was, why aren't there more schools like this if so many parents want them and they are so successful, as you saw in that clip. Unfortunately, the answer that you get to that a lot is that it's because some parents don't care, or it's because of poverty, or it's because of culture. And I think what's interesting about that clip is that even, the parents in Harlem were surprised by the results that the school was getting. And what these schools all over the country are proving is that that's not true. It's not society, and it's not a parent's lack of interest that's causing this enormous achievement gap between the Westchesters of the country and the Harlems of the country.
Where are you from originally?
I'm from Connecticut originally.
What part?
I'm from Greenwich, Connecticut.
And did you go to high school out there, and if so, where?
I did. I went to Greenwich High School. It's the one public school in town.
Explain. Greenwich High School's got a reputation. Explain about the school. How big is it?
It's quite big. It's got several thousand kids. It's been growing since I was there, so I don't know how big it is now. But it's known for being a good public high school. I take a little bit of issue with that. I think that there's still a lot of room for improvement there, which is why I get a little bit scared that then I hear that 30 minutes away in Harlem, kids are doing half as good as they were at the school that I went to. I think that's terrible. And in fact, that's proven in testing. There's also an achievement gap between the United States and the top 5% of students here. Whether you disaggregate it based on income level or test scores or what, our students are falling behind. globally. I mean, I think we're something like 22nd out of 29 countries. So really this affects everyone. I mean, I think whether you're from Greenwich or Westport or you're from Harlem, this is a serious problem.
It's safe to say that Greenwich is one of the most, it's one of the richest towns in America.
Yes.
I mean, the people that live there do very well.
And so really the world. Yeah, people are very lucky. Yeah.
Do they spend a lot of money at Greenwich High School on education in your community?
On the taxes,
yeah.
or
you know, you hear all the time that they spend more money in Washington D.C. per student than they do any place, or in Boston, or places.
Yeah, I mean, I think the money is really important in some respects. I think it's sort of a red herring because, you know, like you say, if you break it down per pupil, it doesn't seem to lead to higher or lower outcomes. I mean, of course, like I think teachers should be paid more, particularly the best ones. And I think there's always room for more spending, but I think it's more about effective spending than about needing more money.
Who gets the most upset about Eva Moskowitz, and why?
I don't know if I could answer that question. I mean, you know, we saw a lot of people that were upset by her. I think she has a long-standing relationship with Randy Weingarten, who was the president of the United Federation of Teachers at the time when Eva was chairing the Education Committee. And it sounds like the UFT was very upset by a lot of the hearings that Eva was holding with regards to school performance and all of the contracts related to teachers and custodians and principals. And so my understanding is that the union actually ran somebody against Eva when she ran for borough president and ended up losing.
And Randy Weingarten is now head of the American Federation of Teachers.
Yep.
Here's the next clip. It's someone you talked to who was not on your side in this. Let's watch it.
Well, I think the union is a force in New York City, as well it should be. I think that the union is here to stay. I don't think it's going anywhere, and I think to think that you can get rid of it is a mistake. Frankly, I'm a unionist. My husband ran the largest union in New York City, and I believe it's important because I believe by collective bargaining through the union, you get the best deal for everybody.
The teachers' union contract is 600 pages in length. It's kind of the governance structure for schools, and it lays out all the things that teachers can't do. It prescribes almost every aspect of schooling. It limits prep time to one 50-minute period per day. We think teachers need 3 prep periods a day to be excellently prepared. That would be a violation of the contract. We also think that we need to be able to work collaboratively with teachers to improve their practice. So I all the time go into classrooms, as do my principals, to watch a teacher teach unannounced. We have an open door policy. That's prohibited in the teachers' union contract. It's very, very hard to run a school where everything is predetermined, because what you need to do in order to meet the needs of children is you need to constantly refine your school design and school schedule. If there's a problem today, we can fix it by the end of the day.
Betsy Gottbaum does what in New York City?
She was the public advocate. It's an elected position. She's since retired.
Would the unions talk to you?
No, unfortunately not. You know, again, going into it, I was very interested in the whole picture and in no way from a sort of a partisan perspective. But unfortunately, they declined. I mean, we tried very hard from day one, actually up until we locked picture. I was so determined that I was going to include them in this film, and I thought it was very important, their vision for public education going forward. But
why not?
They declined.
Why wouldn't they talk?
They didn't give a well, the reason they gave was that they didn't have time, but I would imagine that over the course of a year, they probably just decided that it wasn't worthwhile. I mean, you know, this was my first film, so to be fair, not very many people wanted to do me any favors. So it's very challenging to make a documentary, and one of the most challenging parts is access. And so, we worked hard to do it. We gave them many opportunities and said anybody is welcome to come speak, and they decided not to.
As you sit outside watching this documentary, the traditional lineups of Democrats and unions don't work. I mean, help me on that one. She's a Democrat.
Yep.
And she doesn't like a lot of the things that the unions do. She's talking about a 600-page contract. Mm-hmm. What's in that contract that's so bad besides what she said?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things in the contract, and I think it's very restrictive. And I think what's sort of interesting that I discovered is that it doesn't always even support teachers, which is a little bit peculiar. But I met a lot of teachers that felt very frustrated. They felt like their hands were really tied and that they couldn't do a good job given the rules and regulations, and that there in fact really wasn't like a culture of success in their schools that they believed was possible. And so you find that schools like Eva's and Jeffrey Canada's and Daisha Toll's are getting thousands of teacher applications from traditional public schools.
What are the numbers? Do you have any idea how many charter schools there are in the country?
I think there's about 5,000 now, and the president is working very hard to grow that number.
How much, President Obama? Mm-hmm. How many of the charter schools are supported by taxpayer money, by the local money?
Financing depends by state. So I know in New York it's 75%. So they get 75 cents on the dollar, and they have to fundraise for the final 25 cents.
Are they considered public schools?
Yep, they're entirely public. They're open enrollment by law. That's where the lottery comes from. If more parents enter their children to attend the school than they have space for, they're required by law to hold a lottery. It's totally random.
I noticed on the United Teachers, Federation of Teachers website that they do have charter schools that are unionized.
There's a few in the city. Yep. There's a few unionized.
Why don't they have to be unionized, or how do they keep the unions out if they don't want them in there?
That's part of the charter law, is that they're not required to be unionized. In the traditional public school system, as soon as you are given a job there, you're essentially signed up for the union and you begin paying dues. Charter schools just don't have that. They can be unionized. Teachers can vote to unionize, but by and large, they choose not to.
What year did you get out of Greenwich High School?
2001.
And what year did you get out of Duke?
2005.
And this is your first documentary. Did you work on others before you did this by yourself?
I did. Well, I worked as an editor since I graduated, so for about 5 years. But I was working freelance, so I was working on lots of different types of projects, but my last few were all documentaries.
What did you study at Duke?
I studied biopsychology, so I was not in the film department.
What got you interested in film?
My last year in school, I had always been interested in it, but had been persuaded that I would find a job if I was working in the sciences, which was also an interest of mine. But so I learned how to edit for a friend's film my last year just for fun, and instead of going back to school, I decided that I did want to work for a little while, and I've been doing it since.
One small thing I noticed, the kids in the school, the little boys had ties on. Mm-hmm. Do they all wear ties in charter schools?
Well, it's hard to make generalizations about charter schools because part of what's sort of exciting about them is they can all do sort of whatever they want. So many of them choose to have uniforms, which the schools in the film all do. But, again, they're not required to do that.
But it was interesting, the little kids had ties on, but the next clip shows the mayor of Newark without one.
Right. Right.
I don't even go to lotteries anymore because they break my heart. A child's destiny should not be determined on the pull of a draw.
Of course, the lottery is prescribed by law. If demand outpaces supply, you have to do a lottery. You do not have to do a public lottery. We do a public lottery to show that there are thousands and thousands of parents who are interested in a phenomenal education for their child.
Daddy, let's play.
Well, right now, Eric is in the lottery for 2 other schools besides Harlem Success Academy. If he gets in the other 2, I would be happy, but I really want them to get into Harlem Success Academy.
What can I do? I just wait for the lotto. I just put everything in the God's hand. I'm gonna take everything.
You know, it's difficult because it's one of the best schools in the area and you really want your child in, but it's not a seat for every child. But I'm hoping that we are picked.
I'm not, but baby, nothing. I'm not, but I'm not about to do. If I don't have to do, about my
The numbers again in this situation, how many people applied in the lottery and how many slots were there?
That year there was about 3,400 applicants and about 475 spots. So, you know, about a 15% chance. Again,
Here's Cory Booker, a Democrat from Newark. What changes somebody who is a Democrat from being totally for public schools and then also for charter schools?
I mean, Mayor Booker has been a champion of education reform for a long time. He and Eva and Chancellor Klein, who are all Democrats and featured in the film,
Joel Klein from New York?
Yes. Yeah, the Chancellor in New York. Have been working tirelessly for this for many, many years, much longer than most people have even known that this is a problem. And I think what's at the heart of it is probably what attracted me to this issue, which is just this sense of sort of injustice, and that it really doesn't have to be that way. I mean, you visit these schools that are working, and they can be traditional public schools or charter schools or private schools. It doesn't really matter. But when they're working, you can really feel it. I mean, the kids are happy, the teachers are happy, they're learning, and you just get this sense that they're moving towards something great, which is college. And I think, you know, many people like Mayor Booker believe that it's possible for things to get better.
Now, what's driving you in this? What I mean by that is it being a documentarian or being, interested in issues? Because the documentaries often are issue-driven or they have a point of view.
Well, I was really interested in the story. You know, again, I just wanted to get to know some families and their kids and to tell their side of the story, because you hear these terrible statistics all the time and the outcomes, which, you know, often are incarceration or dying young, being on welfare. It's serious, serious risks, but that's not the heart of it. The heart is that these are real kids. And you see these kids in the film and they're just like, you know, any other kids. I mean, they're adorable. Someone actually accused me of picking like the cutest kids or something, which I thought was funny because I think everything that's 2 feet tall is really cute and holds promise, you know. And so for me, it was the story that was interesting, but you know, I certainly have become very attached to those kids and to trying to help, you know, improve circumstances.
How did you find? We saw 3 new parents there, Eric Rochford, for instance. And Laura Brown Goodwine, and the other one was Emil, yeah. Emil. Johansson. How did you find them?
I met them all actually at information sessions that the school holds, which we saw in an earlier clip, where Eva or an administrator at the school, it's essentially an open house and parents come to check it out. And many of them come, it's interesting because one of the sort of myths that I've encountered is that these are parents that care more. But I met a lot of parents that were there by accident. I mean, they do a very aggressive marketing job. They put a lot of flyers under doors because they really don't want just parents that ostensibly care. You know, they believe that all kids deserve that chance. And so you do meet a lot of parents that are essentially there by accident.
Here's Eva Moskowitz again.
The unions are playing to win. And because they don't want to be the face of the opposition to charters as a largely white-dominated leadership organization, and because it would be so obvious that they are protecting the interests of their members and so forth, what they will often do is hire an outside group like an Acorn, which is a community-based organization, and they'll bus in hired guns, protesters, who will protest charter schools in general or a particular school. And they make a number of arguments about charter schools. They'll say charter schools only succeed because they have small class sizes, even though we have kindergarten classes of 27, 28, 29 children. Or they'll say charter schools don't educate special ed kids. They'll say that if a charter school goes into this building, class size will triple, even though these schools in Harlem are incredibly under-enrolled. The struggle is a national struggle. If you talk to charter operators in any city, in any state, you will find that the opposition comes from unions and from Democratic local officials.
Principal reason the unions, again, don't want charter schools?
I mean, I think there's really sort of a turf war going on. You know, I think the public education system has existed the way that it does now, you know, since just after World War I, basically. And that's a lot of time, and the union really has had a monopoly over it for that time. You know, again, if you become a teacher in the traditional public school system in New York City, you're automatically enrolled in the union, and that's a very secure position to have. And they're, you know, a business. You know, their job is to protect teachers, and charter schools are not required to unionize. And so I think that poses a threat.
Where did this ACORN group come from, and what's the status of ACORN in this country today?
ACORN has since dissolved, ostensibly. Since then, I think it's restructured itself as different organizations.
Got a new name.
Yeah, which I think varies by state. But at the time, they were a community-based organization that the UFT paid about $500,000 to in order to protest this charter school in particular, but also the expansion of charter schools in New York in general. And we encountered, that was the first sort of political controversy that we encountered, and we just drove by that protest and became curious about what was going on, and it turned out that they were in fact protesting the school that our families that we were featuring wanted to get their children into.
Would they talk to you?
No, they would not. No, they said that they were not allowed, that we needed to talk to the parents that were there. But I only identified 2 or so parents from the school who did talk, and you see in the film.
And that was taped when? Or did you use tape or film, by the way?
Tape.
Tape. And when did you tape that particular demonstration? What time of year?
That's a good question. Let's see. I think that was in the spring.
Of 2009.
Okay. Yeah. So we filmed from February to May, so it was before the lottery.
Here's some more from your documentary on the demonstrators.
I'm not against charter schools, but the way that they're using charter schools in this neighborhood, I'm against that. And in my opinion, they're doing it. It's another tool for gentrification.
We did a lawsuit because they went about it wrong. We would like to be involved in what's going on with DOE.
We have our PTA president, Brenda A.
The charter school will not be inside of PS 190.
Right. This issue is not just about this school. Let's be clear. This is about every school in this community. I'm so glad that we are joined by ACORN, because sometimes it's been... So young man, come over here for a minute. This one's for you. What's your name?
Mark Scott.
Mark Scott.
Yes.
Mark Scott, let me hear you say, the people united will never be defeated.
The people of United will never be defeated. I will save my family. If I have to save every school, I ain't gonna know.
Yeah. Well, hey, Harlem, Mark Scott has said it. We have our marching orders. All right? So let's go forth and conquer.
Explain. People united will never be defeated. How are they being defeated if there are charter schools?
Well, that's actually like an ACORN chant. You hear them saying that when it's public housing disputes and otherwise. So I don't know how specific it really the moment, but you do get this sense that the community, and the scene that's sort of ramping up to is a very sort of emotional and aggressive meeting, town hall type meeting between the Harlem Success Academy parents who need additional space in order to accept new classes of kids, and parents from the community, as well as parents that the union is in fact busing in to come argue against this decision. And I do think that there's a sense of that these charter schools are coming from outside, that they're taking over the community, and that it's, gentrification, like the gentleman said earlier, which I think are all sort of intentionally propagated by the union.
You mentioned earlier that $500,000 was spent by the United Federation of Teachers to bring in Acorn.
Mm-hmm.
What something like this whole documentary cost you, and how did you get the money?
This film cost me less than that. And the funding was from all over. I had some very generous donors early on, which enabled me to begin filming.
Were they donors that wanted you to have, they knew what your point of view was?
They weren't really interested. They were interested in me being able to make a film. They were just very generous and entrusted me with that. But then I used the film that we got early on to raise money from foundations. I applied for grants from foundations that support everything from poverty to public education to entertainment and so on.
You used the film. In other words, you show them your film?
I showed early, short pieces so that they got a sense of the production quality.
Let me ask it a different way. If you weren't headed in the direction of basically supporting the idea of choice,
Mm-hmm.
would they have funded you?
I think it depends on the funder, probably. I mean, they really had no say over the final product, so as far as they were concerned, it could have ended up either way. They didn't even see an early rough cut.
Yeah. Did Eva Moskowitz help fund this?
No, in no way. She was a little trepidatious, actually, about us filming, and was very generous to open her school doors not knowing me or what the final film would look like.
Here is Eva Moskowitz at a public space hearing. Before we do that, public space, and they alluded to it in the last clip, charter schools are located sometimes inside another school?
Yeah, it's called co-locating. And in New York, that happens very often. That they'll have, one thing that Chancellor Klein has done in the traditional public school system is break down large schools to be many small schools in the same building. And this is sort of like that. So you can have a public charter school on one floor, and above that and below that, different traditional public schools.
Okay, here's the clip.
The proposal that is in front of us this evening is the location of Harlem Success Academy 2 into the M194 facility. With that, I will give the microphone to Harlem Success Academy 2.
We started our first school in August of 2006 because we believe deeply in what children can accomplish. We obviously need a space for our school, and that is why we're here. Thank you very much.
My name is Brenda Ain. I am the PTA president of 194, and I'm also a parent. If you mean well, then you would not come into our community and try to divide its neighbors. The PS 194 is here, and we will not, I repeat, we will not give up this fight. Build your own building.
Let me say to Miss Eva Moskowitz, Miss Moskowitz, as I said to you before, folks in Harlem will not let you disrespect them.
She's our Obama, okay? She brought change to our kids, okay? My 13-year-old just got put in the 8th grade, and my 5-year-old is teaching her to read. We're not trying to say your kids can't come here. We're not trying to say we don't want your kids. We're trying to say, tell them to come and talk to her, see what she's doing, and bring it to your school, and let's work together as a team. Not call each other names.
How much tension was in the room?
very high. There is actually police there that on occasion would have to calm people down.
So how is it, again, that if you locate that charter school inside of PS 194, you're dividing the community?
Well, that was a school that was at risk of being closed for poor performance. They had something like 30% of kids at grade level. So, it's hard to imagine that every year, that means, for the past many years, another few hundred kids are going to go to that school, and you basically know that 70% of them are not going to be at grade level. And so the chancellor was planning on closing the school, and that's why you got such anger.
Here's some more from that particular meeting.
I have a problem with 21 charter schools coming up into Harlem. I said 21. I am so tired of being tired of people disrespecting me and my children and my school. This space is for the children that is zoned for the schools. Mr. White, you can go back and tell your bosses that this is not a desert storm. No one is gonna run through here like Storm and Norman. That's not happening.
Harlem Success Academy, y'all are not welcome here. We will not welcome you here. We will fight. I will fight until my dying day. I refuse to see y'all in PS 194. It will not happen. It will not happen. It will not happen. Over my dead body. Over my body.
Did it happen?
Did they get access to the space? No, they didn't. No.
Who determined that?
What ended up happening was that the UFT filed a lawsuit about the school closing and won, and so the space did not become available.
And if you go to someone go to a charter school, say for instance, this is up in Harlem, it's up above 110th Street, if you were from 33rd, could you go to that charter school if you wanted to?
You can enter the lottery, but what this particular school applied for in their charter was preference for district students, as well as actually for students coming from failing schools and closing schools and siblings. So they try to keep families together, they try to serve the community, but all of this is dictated by law.
Did you change your mind during this about anything that you thought you believed before you got into this documentary?
I mean, I think, going into it, again, my commitment to all sides was very strong. And it's difficult to be so frustrated and closed out from, one of those two sides so consistently for over a year. So I think, my allegiance to the kids maybe has become stronger. And I don't think that the union always has the kids' best interest at heart.
Here's Gregory Goodwine Jr. with his mother.
Listen to me. When we go inside, we're going straight on the line, okay? So we need you to cooperate.
What does cooperate mean?
Means do what I say. Good one? Yeah, good one, yep. Gregory. Greg, come on, let's go.
My name is Gregory Alexander Goodwine Sr.
When you go through where you sit, over there, right? Go ahead.
I can just flash you back to where it began, 1983, right after I turned 16 years old. My cousins and their friends had become thieves, so to speak. They like to go in stores and take stuff.
See your left hand, kiddo. Okay.
They would show and flash their money and show their new clothes and everything that they were doing. And it just attracted me. It went from stealing to selling drugs. I was thinking that I would become the kingpin guy, the guy with all the money, and then I could pull out. But it never surfaced. It never surfaced. It just took me so long to realize that the decisions and the choices that I made coming up were the wrong things, you know? They were the wrong things. And I don't regret it, and the reason that I don't regret it is because I have something and someone to give something to forewarn them, don't think like I thought.
Where is he in prison?
He's upstate New York.
And you had to go up there with him and the family and all?
We did, yeah. We went up
And why
twice.
did they let you in? I mean, what were the rules there at the prison?
It took some, we had to go through their office at Albany, but, we just had to go through the proper pathways, and then they helped us.
And what impact did that particular session have on you?
That was a really difficult day. It was a long interview. It was about 2.5 hours. And, I had never been to a maximum security prison before. We hadn't met before, but I knew his whole family. And so it was very emotional, an emotional day.
Now, is he married to?
They're still married.
This is a good one.
Mm-hmm.
And how many children do they have total?
One. Just a little
one,
Gregory, yeah.
And how old is Gregory? And how old are most of the kids that you were showing?
They were going into kindergarten or first grade. So.
And the charter school goes for how many years?
Well, this school is new, so it has its first class of 5th graders this year. And it began in kindergarten and grows every year after that. It will go through 8th grade.
How close is this statistic to what you know? I read it somewhere in preparation. 1.1 million students in K-12 with 50,000 in charter schools in New York City. Does that sound right?
That sounds about right. Yeah, well, there's 200 charter schools, so I don't know if that's a bit high, but I'm not sure.
This is a confrontation of city council, and we'll watch this. And again, did you ever see Eva Moskowitz lose her cool?
No, she was always quite calm. She's been doing this for a long time. So.
And she used to hold hearings that were questioning the union.
In this room, in the city council room.
When she was on the city council.
Yep, she chaired the committee in which she testifies in the film.
And a lot of stories say she wants to run for mayor. Does she still have that interest?
That's what I hear, yeah.
Okay, let's watch this.
Let me turn to my colleague, Maria Del Carmen Arroyo of the Bronx.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You, in your testimony, said, Councilmember Jackson, we both live in Harlem. For the record, do you live in Harlem?
I grew up in Harlem, and I live in Harlem.
You live in Harlem currently?
I do.
Would you share with us a street?
I have 3 young children, so I would prefer not to. Are you questioning that I'm telling the truth?
Yeah, I am. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the next question.
That's a little
let me just
offensive. I'm happy to take an oath.
Offense.
I'm happy to take an oath as to where I live.
Wait, I can handle this.
Mr. Chair.
One second, please.
I'll move to the next question.
One second. I know for a fact that Eva lives in Harlem, but clearly I represent part of Harlem, but I live in Washington Heights. So
I'm not questioning where you're...
No, I know that. I understand, but go ahead.
So your statement about the schools deserving to be shut down, I think you represent, for me, the one thing that I have a great deal of concern about charter schools. You come in here and say they deserve to be closed down, and then we, those of us who remain in this body, have to navigate the conflict that comes out of the arrogance that comes when you make a statement like that.
I appreciate, and if I have come off as arrogant, then I apologize, but I would like an opportunity to explain what I think you are mistaking, because I don't think it's arrogance. I actually think it is my own personal experience with District 5 schools. I went to them as a child. I had to figure out what to do as a mother, and it is my
experience of the pain of wanting your kids to get a phenomenal education and being told it's that zone school or nothing. That's what you've been assigned to, and you better like it or you're done. And I think that that is an experience as a parent that is just awful. You bring these kids into the world, it's your obligation to do right by them.
Her background, how much education does she have?
She, I believe, got her PhD in history at Vanderbilt, where she taught.
So she taught college for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And does she, and I have to ask this based on, because you left us hanging, does she really live in Harlem? Do you
No,
know-
she does.
do
Oh,
you know that for a
absolutely.
fact?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And she was raised in Harlem.
Central, yeah. Mhm.
The obvious thing is that almost everybody you see in any of these rooms are African American.
Mhm.
Are there many whites that live in Harlem? And why would she, what was her family doing living in Harlem?
She grew up in Harlem, and she went to District 5 schools, and her parents, when she came home every night, would tutor her. And she noticed her classmates falling farther and farther behind, and I think that sort of inequity fuels her now.
How much does money have to do with all this? I found a story in the New York Daily News from February the 27th of 2009. And it says here, written by Juan Gonzalez, Moskowitz, who makes no secret of her desire to create 40 charter schools across the city and run for mayor someday, raked in $371,000 in salaries in 2006 and 7 school year from organizations connected to her 4 schools' tax records show. Was that audience aware of that kind of money that she's making?
Yeah, it's very public. I mean, their finances are totally open. And so it's really no secret. I mean, I think leaders of high-performing charter schools, they call them charter operators, are making pretty good salaries. And I think those organizations feel that it's a worthwhile use of money to have an effective leader.
How much, though, are they resenting that in these meetings that you're seeing? Or also, how much of these city council people get their money from the unions to run for office?
Well, I mean, I think there is some resentment about her salary, which I think is a little bit confusing because at the same time, everybody wants teachers to get paid more. And so that's sort of the philosophy that I think a lot of the charter schools respect, is if we want great talent, we need to reward it. The teachers union is the largest lobbyist. They spend the most dollars lobbying Albany than anybody else in New York City. So you have to imagine that a fair number of city council members are tied financially to union donations.
How long is this documentary?
It's 80 minutes.
Is it available on the web yet to buy, or do you have to wait till it gets through the theaters?
It's in theaters right now. We're in Washington, D.C. this week, and then we're opening in Denver. We're also in Palm Springs, New York, and L.A. And then it'll be available on DVD starting in August.
How much will it sell for, do you know?
I don't know. That's a good question. I should find out.
And how many people worked on this with you?
I don't know the total number of people. We had a small crew. We had about 7 people shooting the film, and we have a pretty small team now. We're all wearing a lot of hats.
And did you edit it yourself?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Physically?
I don't always recommend that, but I didn't have that budget somewhat reflects my doing lots of things like that. We
want to go to another clip. We're running out of time. Here is Eva Moskowitz talking to the need to educate kids no matter what the circumstances they came from.
We have families who are in very challenging circumstances, and we do our best to support them. But the main thing we do is educate the children no matter what the circumstance is. They still have to learn how to read and write, and so we need to provide more love at the school. We need to make focus as easy as possible for the child. Does it make it more difficult? Of course it does. Can children be distracted when they've had trauma in their lives? Absolutely. But we can't change the hand that the child was dealt or that we have been dealt as a school. We get that child and we get emotionally attached to that child, and it's our job to educate that kid no matter what.
see. Come on, sit up so I can see how it looks.
But Barack Obama.
Okay.
Barack Obama has socks on and shoes on and pants on.
Okay, so we'll put that on. Come here.
Barack Obama has those black shoes, shiny shoes.
Does he?
Mhm.
You seen him with them on?
Yeah, I saw them.
What are you doing? Are you doing some work?
I am Barack Obama.
Why do you think that? You look a little bit like him in that suit.
No, I feel a lot like him.
Okay.
That's just that part of it's just kind of a sidebar. But what do you see as the connection there between this young fella and Barack Obama?
I mean, I think it's Obama's presence in the film and in Harlem is sort of understated until that moment, but it's very important. I think he's a really important person for these kids, and you see his picture in the classrooms, and the parents, have his calendars in their apartment. And so, Greg Jr. would dress up as him sometimes and go to school and work around the apartment.
What's Barack Obama? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on.
No.
What's Barack Obama's position on charter schools?
He's pro school choice. I think. I mean, his Race to the Top fund is a really historic stand on the need for more options for parents, and that includes charter schools. So he's very positive in that regard.
Now, at the end of this, and we're not going to show the very end because it gives away what happens in the lottery itself, what's the procedure? We've got a little bit of video to show in a minute, but what's the procedure about finding out whether you are chosen?
Well, the parents aren't required to go, so they do send letters home, and it's a random computerized process. But they ask that the parents go in order to show their support. They say to the parents in the information sessions, like, look, we send letters home, but we think it's important for you to be there to prove to people that you want something better because your voice is important. And, if I hadn't seen the news footage of the lottery in 2008, I would have had no idea that this was happening. So I think
and you just
it's
happened
important.
on it, watching on television.
Yeah, I just saw it, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Here's a minute of the video near the end, not to be interpreted as to who the winner is and not the winner, but let's just show that.
You have to see it to find out.
Raj McClary, Cynthia Destinville, Dion Ziegler, Khalil Green, Jonathan Pitts, Maya Glenn, Alisa Rice,
Ain't calling your name, man.
Humphrey, Astrid Antonio Martinez.
They should see you. Let them see you. So they be like, we gotta give him one.
Yolanda Farmer, Jaden Jackson Taylor, Messiah
Is that your friend? Jaden is your friend, Jackson Taylor?
Malachi Taylor, Naima Blanchard, Samaya.
But if they don't, or you name it's okay. Right?
Troy Zuninga,
Now we're ready, willing, able to believe
Sanaya Cornwall, Sapphire Bland,
that the future is in
and
every
our last student
one we
was Johnny
see.
Mullins. Thank you very much and congratulations. And for those of you waiting, there's one more school to come, so keep your hope alive.
What happens if you don't win?
It depends on the family. Most of these families don't have the money to send their kids to private school or to move to a higher performing district. And so many of them are really forced to send their kids to the district schools. Some of them one of the families applied to something like 20 charter schools. And so they're placing their bets, which they shouldn't have to do.
So, what's the hardest part of doing a documentary like this?
I think the whole thing is hard. I mean, I think really there's a pretty serious responsibility that I hadn't had before, which is to tell someone else's story. And I didn't show any of the families the film until it was completely finished. And they're the only ones that I cared about. And we showed some very difficult moments in their lives and relationships.
Anybody get mad at you?
And they all liked the film. I mean, I think it's weird to watch yourself and your family on a big screen, but they all responded very positively and came to our big screening at the Apollo a few weeks ago. So I was really happy about that.
And as we said earlier, Madeleine Sackler is a Duke graduate, grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, lives on 88th Street in New York City right now, and my guess is about 27 years old.
I am 27, yep.
We're out of time. The Lottery is the name of the documentary. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you so much.
Coming up